Boggs wasn't there that day, but Henley Backus, who had been washroom foreman down there since 1922, told me that 4 of his friends were. Andy held them at bay for a while with a scoop of burning hex light, threatening to throw it in their eyes if they came any closer. But he tripped trying to back around one of the big Wash X4 pockets. That was all it took. They were on him.
I guess the phrase gang rape is one that doesn't change much from one generation to the next. That's what they did to him, those 4 sisters. They bent him over a gearbox, and one of them held a Phillips screwdriver to his temple while they gave him the business. It rips you up some, but not bad. Speaking from personal experience, you ask? Only I wish I weren't. You bleed for a while if you don't want some clown asking you if you just started your period. You wad up a bunch of toilet paper and keep it down the back of your underwear until it stops. The bleeding really is like a menstrual flow. Keeps up for 2, maybe 3 days. A slow trickle. Then it stops. No harm done unless they've done something even more unnatural to you. No physical harm done, but rape is rape. And eventually you have to look at your face in the mirror again and decide what to make of it yourself.
Andy went through that alone, the way he went through everything alone in those days. He must have come to the conclusion that others before him had come to, namely, that there are only 2 ways to deal with the sisters. Fight them and get taken, or just get taken. But he decided to fight. When Boggs and 2 of his buddies came after him a week or so after the laundry incident, "I heard you got broke in," Boggs said, according to Ernie, who was around at that time, and he slugged it out with them. He broke the nose of a fellow named Rooster McBride, a heavy-gutted farmer who was in for beating his stepdaughter to death. Rooster died in here, I'm happy to add. They took him, all 3 of them. When it was done, Rooster and the other egg, it might have been Pete Verness, I'm not completely sure, forced Andy down to his knees. Boggs Diamond stepped in front of him. He had a pearl-handled razor in those days with the words Diamond Pearl engraved on both sides of the grip. He opened it and said, "I'm going to open my fly now, Mr. Man, and you're going to swallow what I give you to swallow. And when you done swallowed mine, you're going to swallow Rooster's. I guess you done broke his nose, and I think he ought to have something to pay for it."
Andy said, "Anything of yours that you stick in my mouth, you're going to lose it." Boggs looked at Andy but like he was crazy. Ernie said. No, he told Andy, talking to him slowly like Andy was a stupid kid. "You didn't understand what I said. You do anything like that and I'll put all 8 inches of the steel in your ear. Get it?"
"I understand what you said, and I don't think you understood me. I'm going to bite whatever you stick into my mouth. You can put that razor into my brain, I guess, but you should know that sudden, serious brain injury causes the victim to simultaneously urinate, defecate, and bite down." He looked up at Boggs, smiling that little smile of his, old Ernie said, as if the 3 of them had been discussing stocks and bonds with him instead of throwing it to him just as hard as they could. Just as if he was wearing one of his 3-piece baker suits instead of kneeling on a dirty broom closet floor with his pants around his ankles and blood trickling down the insides of his thighs. "In fact," he went on, "I understand that the bite reflex is something so strong that the victim's jaws have to be pried open with a crowbar or a jack-handle." Boggs didn't put anything in Andy's mouth that night in late February of 1948, and neither did Rooster McBride, as far as I know. No one else ever did either. What the 3 of them did was beat Andy within an inch of his life, and all 4 of them ended up doing a jolt in solitary. Andy and Rooster McBride went by way of the infirmary.
How many times did that particular crew have at him? I don't know. I think Rooster lost his taste fairly early on, being in his nose splints. For a month can do that to a fellow, and Boggs Diamond left off that summer at once. That was a strange thing. Boggs was found in his cell, badly beaten one morning in early June when he didn't show up for breakfast nose count. He wouldn't say who had done it or how they had gotten to him, but being in my business, I know that the screw can be bribed to do almost anything except get a gun for an inmate. They didn't make big salaries then, and they don't now. And in those days, there was no electronic locking systems, no closed circuit TVs, no master switches, which controlled the whole areas of the prison. Back in 1948, each cell block had its own turnkey. A guard could have been bribed real easily to let someone, maybe 2 or 3 someones, into the block, and yes, even into Diamond's cell. Of course, a job like that would have cost a lot of money, but outside standards, no prison economics are on a smaller scale. When you've been in here a while, a dollar bill in your hand looks like a 20 did outside. My guess it's that. If Boggs was done, it cost someone a serious piece of change. $15, well, say, for the turnkey, and 2 or 3 apiece for each of the lumped up guys.
I'm not saying it was Andy Dufresne, but I do know that he brought in $500 when he came, and he was a banker in the straight world, a man who understands better than the rest of us the ways in which money can become power. And I know this. After the beating, the 3 broken ribs, the hemorrhaged eye, the spraying back, and the dislocated hip, Boggs Diamond left Andy alone. In fact, after that, he left everyone pretty much alone. He got to be like a high wind in the summertime, all blister and no bite. You could say, in fact, that he turned into a weak sister.
How are you?
That was the end of Boggs Diamond, a man who might eventually have killed Andy if Andy hadn't taken steps to prevent it. If it was him who took the steps, but it wasn't the end of Andy's trouble with the sisters. There was a little hate.
A little hiatus.
And then it began again. Although not so hard so often, jackals like easy prey, and they were easier pickings around than Andy Dufresne.
He always fought them. That's what I remember. He knew, I guess, that if you let them have at you even once without fighting, it got that much easier to let them have their way without fighting next time. So Andy would turn up with bruises on his face every once in a while, and there was the matter of the 2 broken fingers 6 or 8 months after Diamond's beating. Oh yes, and sometime in late 1949, the man landed in the infirmary with a broken cheekbone that was probably the result of someone swinging a nice chunk of pipe with the business end wrapped in flannel. He always fought back, and as a result, he did his time in solitary. But I don't think solitary was the hardship for Andy that it was for some men. He got along with himself.
The sisters was something he adjusted himself to, and then in 1950 it stopped almost completely. That is the part of my story that I'll get to in due time.